AITA for telling my sister she wasn't the only one affected by our mom's death and to let our dad live his life. Almost 5 years ago, my mom passed away. I was 24 at the time, and my sister was just 17. She was always treated as the baby of the family, and her grief hit her hard. My dad would often find her having night terrors, and she stayed with him for the first year of college before moving out. A couple of years ago, my dad started dating again. When he told us, my sister completely lost it, sobbing and begging him not to pursue it. The strain was so intense that he ended up breaking it off. This happened again with another woman. My dad told me he understood she was still processing her grief, so he didn't want to push her too hard. Last year he began dating someone new who has 2 young boys. My dad seems genuinely happy with her, and I want him to be. When he suggested we all spend Christmas together, my sister argued that Christmas was supposed to be her safe space, filled with memories of our family with Mom. I knew my dad would agree to her request, as he didn't want to risk her not coming. Recently my sister kept asking if I thought Dad would marry this woman. I told her that if he wanted to, I hoped he would. Then last weekend, she mentioned in our family group chat that she was planning to move back in with him after she graduates in May. I was frustrated because it felt like she was trying to monopolize his attention and prevent his relationship from progressing. I expressed my feelings in the group chat, telling her to stop using our mom's death as a weapon and acting like she was the only one affected. I pointed out that she was being manipulative by moving back in now, especially since she hadn't planned to before learning about his girlfriend. My dad started texting me to back off, and my sister left the group chat, sending me a long message calling me the bad guy and insisting her relationship with Dad was her own. What hurt the most was that my dad sided with her, saying I crossed a line and should apologize. After reflecting on the situation, I spoke with my dad about how my sister is still grieving and suggested she might benefit from therapy. He seemed unsure, worried that if he brought it up, she would feel attacked. I'm not sure how receptive she would be to my suggestions after everything that happened, but I plan to talk to her when she's more open. I realize now that the conversation I had with her should have come from Dad. He once drove 2 hours at night just to bring her a portable heater because he couldn't stand the thought of her being uncomfortable. It's why I felt the need to say something. AITA for not telling the nurse at my niece's school about my profession? I was supposed to pick up my niece, Sophie, from elementary school and spend the day with her. I had done this a few times before, so it was all arranged. When Sophie spotted me, she came running, but unfortunately tripped and fell, scraping her knee. She started crying, and I rushed her to the nurse's office. The nurse, who was in her early 20s, helped clean and dress Sophie's wound. Sophie, curious about my job, asked the nurse if she would need stitches, and how many. The nurse seemed impressed, and even asked Sophie if she wanted to be a nurse like her. Sophie replied that she wanted to be a doctor, just like me. The nurse looked a bit upset, and asked why I hadn't mentioned my profession. I was confused and told her I didn't think it was necessary. I complimented her on how well she handled the situation, and she seemed to take it differently. As we were leaving, she jokingly said she would never guess my job because I looked better than most of my colleagues. I thanked her again for her help, but she insisted I owed her for not sharing my job. I apologized, assuring her I knew she was capable and did a great job. Later, I wondered if I should have told her about my profession. After reflecting on the interaction, I realized I might have missed some flirting on her part. Taking everyone's advice, I asked my sister if I could babysit Sophie again. Before school ended, I went back to the nurse's office with a bouquet of flowers, thanking her for taking care of Sophie. I also asked if I could make up for my earlier rudeness. To my delight, she agreed. We ended up going on a date that night, which included a lovely walk by the beach and dinner. By the end of the evening, I showed her the post about our interaction, and we both had a good laugh. She's been teasing me about my obliviousness ever since. Thanks to everyone for your support and advice. TIFU by yelling at my kidnapper. A few months ago, during a beautiful summer night, my husband and I were at a rave in Brooklyn. We were having the time of our lives, enjoying ourselves a bit too much. Just as we took our last dose, the music suddenly stopped. I glanced at my phone and realized it was 6:30 a.m. The rave had ended. Panic set in as I looked at my husband, who was completely out of it. I knew I had to take charge. Surprisingly, I felt oddly good and ready to tackle the situation. After all, I was a capable adult. I grabbed my husband, who was now shirtless, and dragged him outside into the harsh morning sun. I quickly assessed our situation and decided I could solve this problem. With my ridiculous zip-off pants, I fashioned a makeshift top for him, and he looked like a confused geisha. Now we just needed to call an Uber. After what felt like ages, I spotted a car on the side of the road. I approached it, only to find it was locked. I tried a couple more cars, all parked. Frustrated, I finally turned around and saw an actual Uber parked in the street, watching me. I cautiously approached, and to my relief, the door opened. "Hello, are you the car?" I asked, trying to sound normal. The driver nodded, and I grabbed my husband to join me. As we drove, I noticed the driver was playing techno music softly. I thought it was a thoughtful touch, so I commented, "This is nice." But he didn't respond. I tried again, louder this time. "I like this." Still, nothing. I realized the music was all in my head. I quickly clarified, "Oh, I meant the music," but it wasn't there. His silence began to worry me. The driver kept looking at me through the mirror with a strange expression. Then, suddenly, the car stopped. I looked out the window. We were alone on the side of the road. Panic surged through me. I glanced at my husband, blissfully unaware of the tension. Summoning my courage, I shouted, "You better explain why we're parked right now." The driver turned to me, confusion in his eyes. "Miss, I'm sorry. There is a red light." In that moment, I realized I was not the sober guide I thought I was. We both burst out laughing, and I immediately apologized for my outburst. He chuckled and handed us bottles of water, making sure we were okay for the rest of the ride. Every time we stopped, he would say, "Miss, there's a stop sign," or, "Okay, we're just merging now, don't worry." He even gave us Advil for our headaches and made sure we got inside safely before driving off. I like to think that as an Uber driver in NYC, that was the least weird ride of his day. He may have forgotten us, but we will always remember him. Thanks for not taking us to Bellevue, my guy, and may you always come to a complete stop at all red lights. Got a 65-year-old repeatedly banned from Facebook for being a bigot. This story began a few years ago when I was still active on social media. My mom has a friend, let's call her Kathy. They've been friends for over 30 years, standing by each other during weddings and becoming godmothers to each other's firstborns. Their friendship is truly something I aspire to have one day. Unfortunately, Kathy is married to one of the worst people I've ever known. Let's call him Grant. I remember a family vacation about 10 years ago, where Grant would drink heavily and openly insult his daughters. He would berate his eldest for not losing weight before the trip, and I still remember the awful text exchange she showed me. It was clear even then that Grant was not as kind as his wife. He had a temper and an attitude that screamed, "Holier than thou." While Kathy worked tirelessly to support their family, Grant embraced unemployment, getting fired from job after job due to his confrontational behavior. During his long stretches of unemployment, he became addicted to Facebook, using it as a platform to voice his hateful opinions. I was appalled by the homophobic posts he shared, and I often lamented to my mother about it. Kathy tried her best to get him to tone it down, but once Grant had an opinion, there was no stopping him. Eventually, I decided to take action. I started reporting every single one of his offensive posts. He would go quiet for a few days, only to return with more vitriol. One night, after a few drinks, I couldn't hold back my disgust and commented on one of his posts. That led to him blocking me, which I thought was a small price to pay. A few months ago, Kathy had a very unpleasant public confrontation with Grant, resulting in police involvement. This incident gave her the strength to finally leave him, which was a relief for everyone. My mom has been supporting Kathy through this tough time. As they navigated this difficult period, more of Grant's troubling behavior came to light. Allegedly, he would throw his iPad on the ground, claiming that the internet and Facebook were against him because he couldn't log in. It turns out that every time I reported him for his discriminatory posts, he was banned from Facebook for days or even weeks. He would sulk like a child denied his toys. When my mom told Kathy about my reporting, it was a revelation. Now, as they go through a divorce, Grant has little claim on the house, and Kathy is thriving with a newfound lease on life. Both she and her daughters have court-ordered restraining orders against him, leaving Grant isolated. If he hadn't blocked me, I would have continued reporting him without hesitation. The day someone walked into the office wearing a corporate-grade privacy violation on their face. So this happened last week, and I'm still recovering from the chaos it caused across 4 departments. I work in IT for a company where please don't leak our stuff isn't just a guideline, it's practically a lifestyle. You'd think this would be intuitive. You'd think people would ask before bringing in gadgets that can live stream the entire building to Meta servers. But you would be wrong. I was sitting at my desk sipping my first coffee and hoping for a normal day when security called me. Not an email or a message, an actual call. That's already a red flag because the only time they call is when someone tries to badge in with something ridiculous. Can you come to reception? We have a situation. Great. Nothing ever begins with situation and ends with and then everyone got cookies. I headed down and there was an employee standing there like they were about to board the Starship Enterprise. Backpack, badge, smile, and the most innocent-looking pair of Ray-Ban glasses I've ever seen. But these weren't just any glasses. They were smart glasses, complete with a camera, microphone, AI assistant, and cloud upload. Security looked at me with the expression of someone who has accidentally activated a bomb. Are these allowed? Here's the fun part. We didn't have a policy for this. At all. Nobody thought to write, don't wear personal surveillance devices into the building because apparently that would have been too obvious. So now it's up to me, the IT guy who once had to explain what a GIF is to an executive, to make a spur-of-the-moment compliance ruling on whether a pair of sunglasses is a tool of industrial espionage. I asked the employee, as politely as possible, if their glasses recorded. Oh yeah, they said proudly. They do video, audio, photos, voice commands, basically everything. Great. Just what I needed before 10 a.m. Totally normal workplace thing. Security's eyes widened like the glasses had started counting down from 10. And so began the grand corporate panic. Security flipped through internal SOPs like they were trying to summon a policy from sheer force of will. HR was pinging me, asking if this fell under the wearables guideline. It did not. Compliance was in a meeting, as they always are, and legal was unreachable. Meanwhile, the employee was just standing there, rocking their CIA cosplay, probably wondering why half the building looked like they were participating in a hostage negotiation. After 10 minutes of chaos and at least one person Googling Ray-Ban smart glasses security risks in a corporate environment, the consensus became, we have no idea what we're doing. Therefore, the answer is probably no. I asked the employee if they had normal, non-connected glasses they could switch to. Miraculously, they did. They swapped eyewear, security sighed like they had just disarmed a bomb, and the employee walked in like nothing happened, while the rest of us collectively rebooted our brains. Crisis over, right? Wrong, because 2 hours later we received an official ticket. Hi team, we recently encountered a situation involving connected glasses, Ray-Ban model. We were unsure which guideline applies. As a precaution, we asked the employee to switch to non-connected glasses, which was fortunately possible. Could you please advise if connected glasses are allowed on our premises? Translation, we panicked, and now we want IT to invent a rule so we don't panic again. We have a legal department with 4 counsels, so the ticket was closed, and HR was informed that IT could not advise in this case and should liaise with legal. But I'm sitting here crafting the most professional follow-up response possible, while my brain is screaming, we didn't have a policy because no one expected people to walk in wearing Facebook face cams on a Tuesday morning. We will absolutely have a policy next week, though. Nothing motivates corporate rulemaking like the sudden fear of being involuntarily live-streamed from the coffee machine. So, to sum it up, an employee showed up wearing Ray-Ban smart glasses. Security freaked out, HR freaked out, IT freaked out. Nobody knew what the policy was because it didn't exist. We told the employee to please stop being a wearable privacy violation. They switched to normal glasses, and now half the company is rewriting the rulebook because one person wanted to look stylish with auto-recording sunglasses. I'm starting to hate my fiancé, and it's my fault. Where do I go from here? I'm 32, and my fiancé is 33. Lately, I've been reflecting on when things started to fall apart between us. When did I begin to feel this way? We met at work, both starting in the same position. I had just begun my job a week before him, and at that time I was thriving as a single mom to my 1-year-old daughter. I was recruited for this job because my manager, a regular at the gas station where I worked, admired my attitude and work ethic. After his interview, the assistant manager told me he didn't have much of a personality, but was fit enough to help with heavy products. For a year, we worked on the same floor. Despite being polar opposites, I found him smart, funny, hardworking, kind, and reliable. He disliked the job but still performed well. We became friends, and he was always happy to see my daughter when I had to bring her to work. He'd spin her in swivel chairs and help me chase her around the floor. Early on, he asked me out, but I told him I didn't date coworkers. He respected that and didn't bring it up again. It wasn't until more than a year later, after building a genuine friendship, that I decided to ask him out. From that moment, everything moved quickly. He moved into my house almost immediately and took on a fatherly role for my daughter. His family embraced us, and his mother was thrilled to babysit the first night we met. However, as time went on, things became increasingly difficult between us. Little things I once appreciated about him began to feel like glaring problems. He was introverted and reserved, but I thought he could communicate when it mattered. On our first Mother's Day together, we went shopping for his mother. He had no input on what to get her, so I picked everything and created a cute gift bag. When Mother's Day morning came, he asked me what I was doing. Confused, I asked him what he meant. With the gift bag in hand, he said he was dropping it off at his mom's and then going to work, as if it were the most obvious plan. I felt crushed. I had assumed he would plan something for me, especially after he asked what I wanted. He had never just paid for anything, and at that point, he wasn't even contributing to rent, even though he was living with me full-time. I ended up with nothing for Mother's Day. Not a card, not a date, nothing. He was giving gifts to his mother without me there. It felt like a ton of bricks had hit me. I realized he wasn't just bad at talking. He was bad at communicating. I cried and explained why I was hurt, telling him to take the gifts and spend the night at his mother's house. I salvaged the day, but it was without his support. I tried to understand, thinking it was his first serious relationship and that he just didn't know better. He apologized and I moved on. But now, 3 years later, every issue follows the same pattern. I talk, he hears but doesn't truly listen, and I end up hurt. He mutters a weak apology and I let it go, hoping things will change. They do for a short time, but then he falls back into his old habits. He's the only father my daughter knows, and we have a 2-month-old together. We own a home. The only silver lining is that he finally started therapy after how he treated me during my pregnancy. But I don't know how much longer I can hold on. 3 years of feeling ignored, of conversations where I'm left crying while he looks uncomfortable, have taken their toll. He once tuned me out for so long while I was sharing about my day that I stopped talking to see how long it would take him to notice. It took 20 minutes. He looked up and said, "Huh?" He's never introduced me to anyone he could call a friend, and he doesn't have meaningful conversations with anyone, his family included. I used to think I was special, that he chose me and my daughter. But now I see that he might try for a while, but I've lost faith he'll truly change. It's all too little, too late. And I feel like it's my fault for not leaving sooner. I'm starting to hate him, and I'm starting to hate myself. I don't know what to do anymore. I've lost confidence in my decision-making. Should I continue to wait, or should I start planning my exit with my children? My new job didn't tell me there are no visible tattoos policy until after I was hired. I'm an early childhood professional with over a decade of experience, currently finishing my master's degree. I have several large tattoos on my forearms, all of them plant-themed, and 2 nose rings. In my previous roles, my appearance was never an issue, except for one time when I switched from hoops to studs to keep the kids from grabbing them. Recently, after a lengthy hiring process that included a video interview and an in-person meeting, I accepted a position at a new organization I was really excited about. On my first day, I received a thick book of policies to review, including the dress code. The HR director had discussed most points with me during the interview, but one crucial detail was missing: the policy against visible tattoos and facial piercings. I immediately approached the HR director, reminding her of my appearance and asking how strict this policy was. She confirmed it was very firm. I would need to remove my nose rings, even though they were covered by a mask, and wear long sleeves or wrap my arms in cloth bandages to hide my tattoos. Hand washing is constant in early childhood settings, and I asked how to manage that with bandages. I was told I could change them if they got wet. When I questioned why this policy hadn't been mentioned earlier, it was brushed off, with another supervisor saying she hadn't noticed my tattoos before. The HR director explained that this policy had been enacted years ago due to concerns from parents about gang-related tattoos, emphasizing the need for a safe school environment. While I understood their reasoning, it didn't make me feel any better. I was surprised to face this issue in 2022, especially during a staffing crisis in my field. I knew they had the right to enforce this policy, but I wondered if the hiring team had handled it appropriately. Should I start asking upfront about my tattoos and piercings? I've always preferred to focus on my skills rather than my appearance, but I didn't want to go through this again. A few months later, I decided that this environment wasn't right for me. The tattoo and piercing issue was significant, but I also had concerns about COVID safety and communication with administration. I chose to resign immediately after my first day. I know it's not typical to leave so quickly, but I felt it was the right decision, since my first 2 weeks would have been training. Fortunately, this turned out to be a great choice. I filled my employment gap with short-term nanny work and babysitting, which allowed me to apply for a fantastic school. During my second interview, I asked the director if my tattoos or piercings would be an issue. She assured me they wouldn't, and even expressed how no one should have to worry about such things when applying for jobs. That was a major green flag for me, and it turned out to be the perfect place to work. I am legitimately considering disowning my mother. I'm 18 and about to graduate high school, but I haven't made any definitive plans for college yet. I'm leaning toward living in a dorm because I've reached my breaking point with my mom. For some background, I'm an only child. My parents are divorced, and my dad lives over an hour away. So it's just me and my mom. My mom has struggled with OCD and hoarding disorder throughout my childhood. Growing up, I wasn't allowed to touch anything in the kitchen. I understand that children should stay away from the stove and knives, but if I so much as touched the fridge or counter, I would get yelled at. I couldn't even get myself a glass of water or a snack. Everything had to be done for me. When I was 12, I insisted that I needed more freedom in the kitchen. After much convincing, she finally allowed me to use it, but then she stopped cooking for me entirely. Since then, I've had to make every meal myself, eating alone in my room because she doesn't allow me at the dining table. She has strict rules for almost everything in the house. There's a chair in our living room that's strictly hers. If I touch it, she has to wash the covering. I haven't seen her sit on the couch or my bed in years because she finds them dirty. She has a long list of rules, like no shoes in the house, cleaning the bathroom after anyone uses it, and washing my hands after picking something up from the floor. I could go on, but you get the idea. Living with her is a nightmare. On top of that, she's a hoarder. Our spare bedroom is filled to the brim with childhood toys, books, and clothes. I found drawers stuffed with 20-year-old recipes and coupons. Because of all this clutter, I usually stay in my room, which has become my safe space. Being around her and the mess is incredibly stressful. There are also things she's done that I would consider abusive. It's hard for me to talk about, but she didn't stop breastfeeding me until I was about 10. It wasn't something I wanted. She forced me to. I don't understand why she thought that was okay. Every morning and night, I had to do this, even after she stopped producing milk. Looking back, I feel utterly disgusted. I'm not even sure I could breastfeed my own children in the future because of this. She would also occasionally hit me as a child, and I have a specific memory of her duct taping my mouth shut when she was angry. Honestly, that was less traumatic for me than the whole breastfeeding situation. Right now, I can barely maintain a relationship with her. I can't stand another day in this house. My dad recently moved in with his girlfriend, and he hasn't been open to me staying with them. Even though I've expressed my issues with my mom, I don't think he fully understands. So for now, I'm stuck here. When I eventually move out, I'm seriously considering going no contact with her. Over the past few years, she's guilt-tripped me about leaving her alone when I go out with friends or spend time with my dad, which isn't something I do often. She has no friends or family besides me, so I feel guilty about leaving her alone. But with everything she's put me through, I can't find it in myself to care. My coworker won't stop complaining about my tattoos. I started a new job in December, and my coworker Carol joined in February. We work for a small company with just 6 of us in production, and we're not customer-facing at all. Everything was fine until the weather warmed up, and I wore short sleeves. That's when Carol noticed my tattoos. She pulled me aside that same day to express how unprofessional she thought I was for having them. I tried to explain that workplace norms are changing and that our company doesn't mind tattoos, but she didn't want to hear it. Since then, she's repeatedly brought it up. At first I responded politely, but eventually I just ignored her comments. I realized she was talking to herself about it and even complained to 3 senior coworkers who really had no authority over me. The tattoos aren't offensive. One set is flowers, and the other is a geometric design. I'm dreading summer, knowing that tank tops and shorts are the norm in our poorly air-conditioned building. Carol is going to be in for a surprise when she sees my full sleeves. Our HR person is part-time and mostly handles onboarding, so I considered going to the owner, but I felt like I should handle this myself. I wanted to put an end to Carol's comments once and for all. 3 weeks later, I ran into Carol in the break room, and she started again. I interrupted her and said, "That's enough. I've asked you politely, and now I'm telling you to stop commenting on my tattoos. They don't come off, and I'm not going to cover them. Your obsession with my skin is really strange, and I don't appreciate it. This is the last conversation I intend to have about this." She looked taken aback, but I didn't give her a chance to respond. I just went back to work. For the rest of that week, she didn't speak to me at all. By the next week, she was only engaging in stilted group conversations, avoiding personal interactions. It was a chilly silence, but it was much better than her nagging. Then we went on site for an installation. It was hot, and we were warned to dress in layers. Of course, during a team swap, I ended up in a tank top, and Carol flipped out. She berated me about my lack of professionalism in someone else's workplace, causing enough of a scene that our boss Jane came over to see what was happening. Carol complained to Jane about my continued and blatant lack of professionalism, but Jane shut her down, saying, "I hired her for her skill, not her skin." I couldn't believe it. Jane quickly became my favorite boss. After that, Carol accused Jane of being unprofessional for tolerating me. About an hour later, Joe, one of the owners, arrived with the HR lady, who was there on her day off. They took Carol back to the workshop, and when they returned, she declared that she couldn't work for such an unprofessional organization and left. That was the last we saw of her, although a scathing review appeared online shortly after. The next day, Jane held individual meetings with everyone, including the senior ladies Carol had complained to. We were all reminded to communicate better and not let issues escalate. Now, there's a designated workroom supervisor and regular check-ins with Jane. The atmosphere is much calmer, and interviews for Carol's replacement start next week. They're also adding a formal policy about tattoos and piercings to our employee handbook, stating that anything goes as long as it's safe and not offensive. Overall, it's been a learning experience for all of us. I'm grateful for the advice I received on how to handle Carol, and I appreciate the positive changes that have come from this situation.